Welcome to On the Chain.
Brad Garlinghouse, the U.S. has fallen behind other developed markets when it comes to crypto. But what else does Brad Garlinghouse have to say? So, all right, let's see what we got.
Token in our tech stack, we use it to enable that cross-border, extremely fast and extremely reliable transaction. So we use XRP because of its attributes that make it fast and inexpensive. There are other tokens that people use for other use cases that don't work as well for payments. The XRP ledger, from its origins, has really enabled payments at scale in a way that certainly Bitcoin, while it's very good for digital gold, its speed and cost per transaction makes it less attractive for a payments type use case. So Ripple.
Oh, I like that. He came out, and he's, not bashing Bitcoin. And we see a lot in the space that might come out and they'll start, going after or bashing XRP, or they want to bash Bitcoin. But his statement here, looking at where the XRP asset is, much better for the payment solution. Bitcoin, he said, maybe good as digital gold, but just expensive to move, slow to move. And I believe when we start looking at places like El Salvador and others that are adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, they are going to see within a period of time it's time to transition and expand to other assets. And at that point, they can then find an XRP. They can find payment rails that will be extremely, extremely cost effective, quick, transparent, and meet the needs of the general public. I think, with what we see, with XRP and tied up in a legal case, this does create some nervous tension, especially when we look at some of the bigger institutions that might be migrating away from tying themselves to the dollar, and they're looking for other legal tender, to balance out the inflation or, the decreasing valuation of their regional currency. So that's why they're fleeing to Bitcoin, because they look at that as a hedge against everything that's wrong in their economy. Now, obviously, it has bigger moves in value with a bigger uptrend overall. And when you're in the smaller numbers, maybe they look at an XRP as being potentially too easily manipulated in price point if a whale dumps. And so they look at Bitcoin with the big numbers. Again, they're looking at the big number, and they say, well, maybe it's just not going to be as easy to manipulate when you're up in that $40,000-$50,000 range. Although we saw it run up to 60 and pull back to 38, so that's a pretty big difference in price valuation. But regardless, here XRP always seems to be the most stable. It's like a stable coin. That fluctuation, what we get, like, look at this, 2% up and down either way typically. We're not seeing big, but we see an 11% change, for the year according to this slide. When we start looking at some of the, target movements. But man, it really, it's always super stable. All right, anyhow, let's go back.
Will continue to use XRP because of its core attributes as a really efficient technology.
Is that something you see continuing in your tech stack going forward?
For sure, without question. And I think you'll see Ripple use the XRP ledger for other use cases as well. We're certainly making investments, as I mentioned, in the carbon credit marketplace and other verticals that we think could be compelling.
We've seen a lot of market volatility, of course, in the public equity markets. We've seen that filter through to the crypto markets as well. What's your outlook for the rest of the year? Do you expect sort of crypto markets to push higher and that volatility reduce, or are you expecting just this continued sort of seesawing we're seeing?
I think it's really hard to know the timing, but I'm incredibly bullish on crypto overall. And frankly, that's because of the macro factors. There's two that I'll highlight. The macro factor around inflation globally. You saw this past week, record inflation at, for I think 4 decades, inflation in the United States at 8.5%. The other factor I think is really important not to lose sight of is, as you and I have talked about, the move.
I didn't mean to stop this, but does anyone have issue? We're watching this this interview, and it seems like the tendency is to always, pull up. There's a handful of assets that they pull up. I'm trying to figure out why Bitcoin Cash. Now, these are, you see positive movement as compared to the XRP. They show it negative 11%. They have Bitcoin up um, uh, at 41,000. Again, showing more stability at that 0.29%. I don't know if they're trying to, through their slides, are they trying to be contrarian to what Brad Garlinghouse is saying, by showing XRP with a negative 11% and then showing Bitcoin, Ether, and Dogecoin. Why are they putting in Dogecoin? Why is that? And Litecoin. I mean, Litecoin obviously still making big moves, but why? They always show the same. And typically it's Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin. It goes back to, maybe old slides that they prepared from like 2017, 2018, and then bringing in Bitcoin Cash. I mean, it really is amazing. So who talks about Bitcoin Cash as an asset that you're going to focus on, that you want to have some conversation, piece. So anyhow, I didn't mean to interrupt. Let's go back.
From crypto overall towards an institutional use case, solving real problems for real customers, and these scaled solutions that aren't just about the speculative activity that has really driven some of the historic crypto market activity.
Brad, I want to sort of move on and talk about regulation, which has been a huge topic yesterday, and it will continue today as well. You're currently in a legal battle with an SEC that's been going on for a year or so. Can you give us an update on that and when you expect a resolution?
That started in December 2020, and the core question there is around a nuanced legal question. Is XRP a security? And did Ripple sell, as an XRP, an investment contract? Did Ripple sell unregistered securities? Did I, Brad Garlinghouse, sell XRP as an unregistered security? I think it's very clear that in the United States, the laws have not been clear. And for the SEC then to go back in time and say, you should have known all along, it's really, I think, going to be hard. It's a hard case. And I think what we're seeing in the court process, which does continue to play out, is a judicial process that recognizes some of this. Even this past couple of days, there was a ruling from the court finally requiring the SEC to publish information about some speeches that the director of corporate finance, Hinman, gave about Ether not being a security. And the fact that even now you have the SEC not able to answer the question, is Ether a security? They won't answer that question. They're saying there's clarity, but then they won't provide clarity. They're saying they won't comment on specific projects, but then they comment on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one of the largest projects, but yet still just a project.
Just in terms of broader crypto market regulation.
That was a real massive statement, that he said. We're seeing, a kind of a look inside of his demeanor, super calm, as he references this. He's not getting angry over where he is right now with the SEC. He's looking at the irrationality of the SEC case, and then, emphasizing the fact that the SEC definitely has some issue with presenting the case, and he feels extremely confident. And he's also then grateful that from a judicial perspective, that the judge is then also moving this down a path of rationality, versus trying to, stoop down to the level of where the SEC is at this point, with the SEC, in all irrationality, trying to present and hide evidence and really cover it up. And so, one of the things that Brad highlighted here, which I think is really, really, interesting, and we've talked about it a lot, but, to hear it coming from Brad Garlinghouse, is that, this focus for them on Ethereum, where, Gary Gensler has come out and said, it's clear there's clarity, when in fact, everybody in the space, everybody in the industry knows that there is a lack of clarity. And we look at the halls of Congress, and they know for a fact that there isn't clarity. We know that for a fact. And so now, for them to try to spin things in this direction, to say, well, you should have known, you go back in history, go back to the beginning when the SEC had no idea. The SEC stayed quiet. The legal commentary at the time was confused. Nobody really had a clear outlook or perspective on where crypto was. So we look at like 2017, 2018, and the ramp up. That's where we started to see a big hyper focus, within crypto. Why? Because Bitcoin hit $20,000 for the first time, and the assets were skyrocketing. Yeah, we saw massive, massive gains. That brought the attention of many within the investment space to say, wait a minute, something's going on here. What is this? Is this going to be a Ponzi scheme, or is this thing legit? And this thing is truly, revolutionizing legal tender and revolutionizing a new asset class that is potentially, at that time, as they looked at it, potentially going to overshadow the current existing structure. And so as we move forward a couple years, obviously we're seeing a massive focus now, a massive change. And the fact that there's so much animosity and there's so much, negative attention being given and commentary being given to crypto means that it is hitting some major, major nerves. And those nerves, in part, are impacting the pocketbooks of not just the financial institutions, but the corrupted congressional representation and the corrupted elements within government that seem to be there to enrich themselves, from a personal perspective, although being sent there to do the will of the people, they line their pockets with gold first, and they almost see it as though they're due some sort of a major return, mainly because they're sacrificing, quote unquote, a period of their life to then, quote unquote, support the people, when in fact they could care less about the people. They could care less about what's good and what's going to help those that elected them into office.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.